as I mentioned, that's where we find Tim Bontemps, national NBA writer for the Washington Post. And Tim, appreciate the time as always. Looking at the two meetings so far, could OKC present a real matchup issue for the Warriors should they meet in the playoffs?
I think they can, but I thought they presented a much tougher one when Andre Robertson was still healthy. For the same reason I think the Thunder are a really tough matchup for the Rockets. Their physicality at all three spots, between the point guard spot, the wing spot, and the big spot, give them a chance to really be a difficult matchup for just about anybody. When you have Russell Westbrook at the point, one of the most physical players to ever play that position, you have Paul George, one of the best two-way wings in the league. Then you have Steven Adams, who is a really underrated player, the best offensive rebounding big in the league, and a guy that, whether it's Clint Capella or Draymond Green, when the Warriors are playing their small ball lineup, can really wreak a lot of havoc in the paint. So, those three guys really can cause a lot of trouble, but the added element of Andre Robertson really was a huge bonus for the Thunder to have a guy they could just throw at the best wing player on the other team. Without him,
right.
That's really hurt them a lot.
Yeah, and they've been trying to figure that out ever since he went down. Warriors are chasing Houston in the standings, at least theoretically chasing. How much, if at all, do they care about their playoff seeding?
I mean, Steve Kerr, the last 3 years, has always emphasized the importance of home court advantage throughout the playoffs. It's something he's pushed for. It's something he's talked a lot about. I think now that they're at this point where they've won 2 titles, they've gone all the way deep into the finals 3 straight years in a row, I think he's more focused on getting to the playoffs healthy this year. I don't think they look at Houston as being an incredibly tough place to play if they have to play there. They're going to have the best record, compared to anybody in the East, so the finals aren't going to be an issue. So I think, Houston is going to push incredibly hard for that number 1 seed. And I think if Golden State is in the mix with them down the stretch, they will. But I think if they get a couple games back and it looks like Houston's going to get it, I don't think that the Warriors are going to go all the way to the end of the line, killing themselves to try to get ahead of the Rockets.
Well, Tim, look at what they are right now. I mean, these Thunder, they're in 5th spot. But at the end of the day, who knows? They could go all the way up to 3rd. You just never know. But is there a little concern about, I know your rotations get small in the playoffs, but is there a little concern about the Thunder's production off their bench? I mean, you talked about losing Roberson, but at the end of the day, you need some bench production. You look at Houston, you look at Golden State, they have strong benches. Golden State's bench has been fantastic come playoff time the last couple championships.
No, you're totally right, Vinny. I went and saw the Thunder play in training camp. I went and watched them do a scrimmage. I happened to be there the weekend that Russell Westbrook signed his contract extension, and I was really high on the Thunder. Then I watched them play in that scrimmage, and I was like, man, these guys only have 4 or 5 guys you can really count on in a playoff series. And I think you've kind of seen that throughout the year. Their bench has not really stepped up. Patrick Patterson has been in and out of the lineup. Ray Felton, I think, was a really good find for them as a backup point guard. He solved, I think, their by far biggest issue from last season. But I think they thought they were going to be able to get, a better guy in the buyout market than they've been able to so far. Ersan Ilyasova, I think, might actually be a decent piece for them to give them some shooting and some rebounding at one of the big spots when they don't have, say, a guy like Patterson out there. But I think that's a real question for them. Can they get enough production from their other guys that, if whether one of their main guys gets taken out of the game a little bit or just has a bit of an off night, they have somebody else that can step up for them. So far, I don't think they've proven they can handle that.
And, Tim, with that being said, let's go big picture. So much is talked about how well the Thunder have to do in the playoffs before Paul George would say, you know what, I like playing with Russ. I like playing with Melo. Wait a minute, this city loves this team. How much is all that need to play in the picture for Paul George to say, you know what, I want to finish out my career here?
I think 3D, there's little doubt that, the Thunder would feel a lot better about their situation with Paul George if they can get to the conference finals as opposed to losing in the first round, right? I mean, that playoff run and the ability to show that they can be a championship contending team, I think will help them a lot. Now, you could argue that they had the same position a couple years ago with Kevin Durant and they lost him anyway. So, if you want to play devil's advocate, you could say it won't really matter. But I think for Paul George, a guy who wasn't necessarily looking to leave Indiana when they had a really good team. It was when their team kind of fell off the face of the earth in terms of compete for a championship. He said, look, I need to go play on a team that has a chance to compete for a title. And, everybody talks about the Lakers, and maybe he can go there with LeBron James this summer. But if it's just the current young group of Lakers and Paul George, that's not a team that can contend for anything. So if the Thunder can make a deep playoff run, I think that's got to go a long way towards helping them convince Paul that that's the place for him to play for the next couple of years.
And Tim, you've been around the Thunder a lot. Now, how much is it for Russell to kind of change a little bit? What I mean by that, last year you had to get 41, the 10s, 11s for your team to do well. How can Russ change to be a better point guard to make Melo and Paul George better so they both say, you know what, Russ is that guy. He understands how to be a better point guard. We need to stay here.
I mean, listen, that's the $1 million question, or maybe the $1 billion question with the Thunder, right? I mean, that's kind of been the thing with Russell Westbrook for his whole career. You know, is this guy able to change his game a little bit to suit people around him? My guess is that the Russell Westbrook we see is always the Russell Westbrook we're going to get. You know, that's just kind of, he's gotten here through kind of sheer determination and will and saying, look, this is what I'm going to be. I mean, remember, when he got drafted, this was a guy that people said, hey, you know, this guy isn't a point guard. You got to go get a real point guard to play with this guy. And, you know, Scotty Brooks believed in him, and Sam Presti believed in him, and Russell Westbrook, most importantly, believed in himself. And, you know, he turned himself into, you know, a Hall of Fame player. And, you know, I think you could argue he needs to change a little bit, but I think Paul George has fit in there pretty great. And, you know, you look at their situation right now. I mean, those three guys I think have meshed really well. So, you know, I think the Thunder I think overall the Thunder feel pretty good about their chances of keeping Paul. And I think they should feel pretty good about it. But to your point before, I do think they need to show that they can have some real playoff